Good evening and welcome to our Coach DYPIU chapter. Hello friends, my name is Jay and I'm currently a second year BTech CSE student at DY Patil International University, Akurdi, Pune. So today, topic of our presentation is going to be one of the most important and powerful tools in Python programming language that are the lists. So now let's look into what are the lists defined in Python. So lists are considered as one of the built-in data types in Python, which are used to store the collection of data in a single variable. So how it is stored a single collection of data? So it can store the integer value, float value, string value, etc. Here, one important point to notice is that we can store a list inside another list in a Python language. Isn't it the cool fact? I personally find it very cool fact if we are able to store a data type inside a data type in a Python. So without wasting any further time, let's just move forward and look into the basic syntax for creating a list. So for creating a list, we have to just first declare a variable. Here I have used my variable, my list as a variable name in which you have to assign a pair of square bracket and that's it. Your first empty list in Python is created. So let me just move into my Visual Studio Code and show you how we can create an empty list in a Python. So as I discussed, we have to create first a variable name. Here I am using my list and you have to assign it with a pair of square brackets. That's it. Your empty list is created. Now just try to print this variable. So as we run this code, we can see here in the output, we get nothing but just a pair of square brackets, which indicates that our list is empty. Here we also have one function called the len function to determine how many elements are present in our list. So if we call that function also, here you can see that in the output it returns 0. That is, we have 0 elements in our list. That is, our list is very much empty as it can. So now let's try to create a list which is full of all the data types, that is the integer value and string value, float value, etc. So here I'm declaring a variable that is my list, and in this list I'm going to store a different data types. That is, I'm going to store first integer value. For like example, I suppose I take 2, then I take 32, and take another float value, so suppose 3.14, or any string value, suppose code chef, another string value, let's suppose hello, another integer value if you can, that let's suppose 43. So when we print this list, we can able to see the list is a item where we can store all the data types. So when we print that list, we can find this all. Here also we can use the len function to check how many elements is present in our list. So when we call it, it says 6. That is, our list contains 6 elements. So let's move to a presentation. So after we learn how to create a list, let's just move forward. What if we have already have a list and we have to add the element in the list? So for adding the element in a list, we basically have three functions. First function we have is the append function. So what this function basically do is to add the element at the last position in the list. For now, don't worry about all these functions because at the end I'm going to again switch to my IDE and show you the use of each function. Now for now only, let's focus it on the append function and try to find out at what example it fails. So it fails at when we want to add the element at our desired position, because at the append function adds the element at the last position, we cannot able to add the add the element at our desired position. So for that, we have another function called the insert function. So this function basically adds the element at our desired position. So this function requires the two arguments, that is the position at which you want to add and the value which you want to add. So as you notice that in both of these functions, one common disadvantage, that is we can only add a single value in both the functions. Whether you can take the append function which used to which we can add a single element in the last position, or you can take insert function which adds a single element at our desired position. But what if I want to add a multiple element in the list? So that to add a multiple element in the list, we have the extend function. What the extend function is to add the multiple element at the same time at the end of the list. So now let's move to my IDE and show you how this function works one by one. So first we have the append function. So let's just copy this list because this is a very important example. So this is a very important example as it contains all the integer and float and string value and paste it here. So the basic syntax for the append function is that you have to first call a variable, that is in here I have my list, and dot append, and append any element you want to like. For example, I want to append 67. So let's see what this will do. Then I will print the list, my list, and we can see that the 67 is added at the last position of the list, right? And not just this 67, we can also append any string value. For example, I want to append any word, that is, hey, I am a member of Code Chef. So this string will basically append at the last position in the list. So let's just print this. Run and run this. So as you can see, after 67, this whole string is added as a one element of a list. Now let's look into the insert function. As this append function only adds the element at the last position, we here have the append function. The syntax for using the insert function is also same as the append function. You have to just write my list dot insert, and we have to pass the index element at which we want to insert. For example, 2, and at 2 I want to insert a string that is my name J, and let's just put into this list. So after we run this, you can find that at the second index, J will be there in the list. So yes, the string J is present at the second index of our list. As the list indexing starts from the 0, so this is the 0th position, this is the first position, this is the second position. So at the second index, my name, that is my string value, is stored in the is a part of the list. Now let's see what the extend function can do. For example, for the extend function, I like to take another example. For that, I have one list, that is the L1. I'm going to store any element, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have another list, that is the L2. Here we have the elements is 5, 6, 7, 8. So how the extend function will work as if we put this in this way, that L1 dot extend the extend, I can pass a list, that is the L2. So let's just run this and see the output. We have to print L1. Yeah. So yeah, you can see that first the L1 was this, but after we extend the list into it, it will add multiple elements. It add the multiple elements at the same time in the list, right? So one thing I like to show you here is common difference between the append and the extend function. Let me just hide this insert function for a moment. So in the append function, if we try to append sm dot list dot append a list of values, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? In my list, my print is my list. So let's check what will happen. As you can see, this append function adds my list inside as a single element of my main list. So this is what I'm talking about earlier as we can store a list inside another list in Python. But if we perform the same operation with the help of extend function, let's suppose here itself, if I don't have this L2, so I don't have this L2. Instead of that, I'll pass this element as 5, 6, 7, 8. So this will also, so remember this, you can see the common difference. It will add all the element as a single list, and here it will add the multiple elements at the end of the list. So this is the basic difference you can see in the append and the extend function. So now let's move back in our presentation. So after now we have learned about how to insert the element. Now what happens if you want to delete the element from the list, right? So for deleting the element from the list, we basically have these three functions here also. First, we have the remove function. Basically, this function, what this function will do is to remove an element from the list by its value. You just have to type the value which you want to remove from the list, and this function will remove that element, right? Again, I'm saying don't worry about this function now only because after finishing, I'm again switching to my IDE and show and take one example and show you this function, how this function will work one by one. So for now only, let's just look into, let's just try to look at one of the most disadvantage of this function. For example, let's suppose in the case I don't know the value of the element I want to delete. But instead of knowing the value of the element, I know the index position at which that element is present in the list. So for that, we have another function called the pop function, which deletes the element according to its position in the list. Basically, we have to pass and the index position of an element which we want to delete, and this will correspondingly delete that element in the list. And we also have one another function, that is the clear function. We do not use this function many times because this function what we do is delete all the elements at the same time in the list. So after using this function, our list will become an empty list. So we don't use this function very much in the list. This function is not very popular. Let me see. We switch back to my IDE and we will show how this function will work. So the remove first will take remove. If I take one example, we can take this example also. We can take this example as it is very important. And syntax for using the remove function is same as all other functions. It is in my list dot remove which we want to remove. Let's suppose I want to remove 32. So I will type here 32. So that's it. That removes 32 value from the list. So if I print my list, you can see that Here the 32 is present, but in the output of my list 32 is not present. That is the use of the remove function. Here we also have another function called the pop function. Pop function also works same as the remove function. You have to just do variable mylist.pop and any index position which you want to delete. For example, I want to delete the element which is present at the second index. So it will remove the element which is present at the second index. So which element present in the second index? First of all, find out. So 2 which is present at the zeroth index, 32 present at the first index, and my 3.14 value still present at my second index. So this fill value will remove after we execute this code. So yeah, after we successfully execute the code, we can see that 3.14 is missing from this list. Basically what we can do in the pop function. We also have one clear function that we are going to see there. First of all, let me just take this example also. And if I use this clear function dot clear, here we do not have to pass any element because as we know that it clears all the elements on the list. So after using this, my list, that is the my list will become an empty list. If I run this code, you can see that yeah, just the pair of square bracket. We can also check by the length function, length of my list. It will produce 0. If we have empty list and the length is also 0, which clarifies that after using clear function, my list will become empty list that it deletes all the elements from the list. As we do not want to clear all the elements at the same time, that's why it is not much popular in the Python. So let's back to our presentation. So yeah, that's all we have today. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Just stay safe and get vaccinated. Thank you.